I got the email, and part of the ground rules were that an independent third party was going to do the vote counting. I do not call the law firm who is on retainer by the Deputy Sheriff's Association an independent party. That is not. By the same token, it was clearly stated in the rules, simple majority. We have several senior members on this board of directors, as well as one that's aspiring to be the state PORAC president. And if they don't know the definition of simple majority versus plurality, then we really have a problem. It said simple majority. Being a political science major, simple majority means 50% plus 1. And it was not 50% plus 1 by their own admission. There's still 50% minus 1 and as much as 75% minus 1 that still voted for another candidate. So why aren't those numbers been released? This is the first time in the history of the Deputy Sheriff's Association that the count hasn't been released. Thank you.
Former Sheriff Thomas, you have one question of one candidate.
For Sheriff Anderson. Surprise. As a previous member of the Board of Directors of the Sheriff's Council and an active participant in executive meetings, you have stated publicly that you are 110% behind the current Sheriff's Council President-elect, and you have said that you firmly believe that the 2005 Gala Sheriff's Council audit will show no wrongdoing. Do you still believe those two statements you have made are true? And if not, what has changed your mind?
Well, you have said that I'm a director of the Sheriff's Council. I was on the advisory as a member. I'm strictly an advisory member to the Sheriff's Council. I'm not a board of director on the Sheriff's Council, number one. I firmly believe that nothing inappropriate occurred in 2005, and yes, I do support the current president-elect, who hasn't actually been voted into office, who had to step into the office as a result of a resignation. So to have the 5 past presidents step forward and I think falsely accuse her of wrongdoing was totally inappropriate. The results of the audit should be out next week, and we will let the audit speak for itself.
1 minute rebuttal.
The rebuttal is that when the bylaws were changed, it made you a standing member of the board. You were involved in executive committee meetings, even calling one at the yacht club last February. But the point is that the past presidents asked to see the books of the organization. It's a mandatory thing that they be allowed to do that. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You should be able to go and ask to see the books of the organization. It's required by the law. It wasn't done. They've bravely stood up. They've caught a lot of flack for it just to make sure that everything was done appropriately. And I agree. The audit will tell, and it should be next week.
Chief Brown, one question of one candidate.
Thank you. My question is for Sheriff Anderson. Sheriff Anderson, what is your definition of executive leadership? And do you believe that you've been a strong executive leader? And if so, please tell us how.
Well, my definition of executive leadership is action, not position. And I think over the last 3.5 years, we've moved the Sheriff's Department in a very positive direction, and we've had a lot of accomplishments. I think we've also had a number of challenges since I took over as sheriff, and I had to clean up quite a few messes from the predecessor that were left behind when he left office. We had 2 years of difficult state budget cuts to work through. We had some high-profile trials that we had to deal with over the last 3 years. The successes that we've had are as a result of my executive leadership. And we've moved in a lot of positive directions over the last 3.5 years. We're actually ahead on the number of deputy positions that we had from 2002. We're also ahead on the corrections officer positions. We're doing more in the way of outreach in adult education programs and at the high school levels. And we've also made positive movement on the North County Jail project, something that hasn't been done in the last 20 years. So as an executive leader of the Sheriff's Department, I think I've moved the Sheriff's Department in a very positive direction. We've made we've accomplished a lot of good goals, but there's still a lot more to do in the future. We've created a 5-year strategic plan. The employees within the Sheriff's Department has had an opportunity to put that together, and we're moving in that direction now.
1 minute rebuttal.
Thank you. Sheriff, with all due respect, I believe that you have failed in providing sound executive leadership, because sound executive leadership involves not only looking within the organization, but looking outside the organization and seeing how the organization impacts in the total scheme outside it. There's a need for strategic thinking. There's a need to be capable of reconciling competing tensions within and outside the agency. There's a need to effectively manage ambiguity and conflict and uncertainty. And above all, there's a need to be reflective and to recognize when you've made mistakes and to admit when you've made mistakes. And I don't believe that you've done that. And I think, as I mentioned before, what perhaps most vividly illustrates that is that when the Sheriff's Council and the Sheriff's Department was in turmoil and needed your leadership the most, you walked away.
Sheriff Anderson, 1 question of 1 candidate.
Okay, my question is for Chief Brown. You claim in your campaign material that you would solve the jail overcrowding problem with an agreement between the City of Lompoc and the county. Why haven't you proposed this, and at what cost, or work to implement this idea?
Well, first of all, that's not going to solve the jail overcrowding problem. We have a 23-bed facility. It is something that could perhaps help and could perhaps mitigate the problem. But the reality is, we used to have an agreement with the Sheriff's Department where deputies were booked into our facility. And that stopped, and it didn't occur under your watch, it stopped under Sheriff Thomas's watch. And there has been no interest, apparently, in renewing the possibility of doing that. We did have discussions with Chief Deputy Bunn a number of years ago, and we're told that there was no interest on the part of the Sheriff's Department in being involved in any kind of an agreement with us to book prisoners into our facility. The reality is, this jail overcrowding crisis that is existing has to be solved with a better plan than what you have offered. You have offered a plan which is in essence a mirror image of a failed plan that was put forward in 2000. And it ignores the fact that the voters of this county have no stomach for a project of that scope and that expense. The only way to pay for that, not only initial construction at this point, but also the more significant ongoing costs, $19 million a year under your plan. The only way to do that is through an additional tax. And you've distanced yourself from that, as have the other candidates. The reality is, this problem will not be solved unless there is a coalition of people, again, in the criminal justice system and outside the criminal justice system, who can recognize the need, let everyone know that everything has been done short of building additional jail space, and then go and market the plan to the public. But that hasn't been done. Then go and market the plan to the public.